Right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, comrades. Welcome to our online dialogue. We're just going to give around 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 minutes for some of our other comrades to join, and then we'll get started.
Yeah, I guess if I go, let's just agree that in all fairness, let's start at, let's say at the time now is what's the right time there?
Yeah. So my time is 2 minutes past 10. So I'm thinking we can
let's
kick
start
off
at
at
5
5
past.
past. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So in 3 minutes. Okay.
So.
Cool.
Okay, just on the admin side, did you receive the WhatsApp? Is that what you're looking for?
Yes. Thank you, Sean.
Cool.
Good morning, everybody. Mr. Standard.
Good morning, Moses.
Hello,
it's nice
how
to
are
have
you?
you with us.
Yeah.
Good, thank you. It's nice to have you with us again.
Yes, man. Unfortunately, I was another commitment.
Yeah, we missed your presence last week. We will get started now officially. Once again, good morning, comrades and colleagues. Welcome to this, our final online dialogue within the 91 dialogue series. And this specific one is on the evolution of pension funds. We are very happy to have you here with us. I see a lot of familiar names. Thank you that you are able to join us again today. Hopefully we also have a great, fruitful and educational session as we've been having. So we are officially getting started now. I know that there are some comrades that are going to join a little later, but in fairness to everyone that joined on time, it's probably best to get started. So as you know by now, this workshop series has been, along with the 91 Sustainable Investing 2.0 publication, which we've been sort of citing for these series, has been proudly funded by 91, which was previously known as Investec Asset Management and the Assisa Foundation. So very thank you to our two sponsors who sort of have allowed for us to have these sessions, as well as to have all the publications and the content that we've been sending to everyone over the past few months. Excuse me. So as we know, we have been doing these sessions since the start of May. We've had 4 so far. As you can see there on the screen, it's the Retirement Funds and Climate Change one, which we had on the 3rd of May. We had the Regulation 28 and Infrastructure one on the 11th, the one on Impact Investing on the 24th of May, and last week we had the ESG Disclosure Standards and Frameworks one, which was presented by me. I forgot to mention that Adrian, who usually does this welcoming and introduction and everything, is unfortunately tied up today, so he won't be able to join us. So hopefully you'll be okay with me doing the presenting, but I don't think you'll mind because the smile. So as I said, today's session is on the evolution of pension funds, and this will conclude our sort of dialogue series under the 91 project. But this does not mean that our online dialogues are done. So as Adrian mentioned last week and at the previous one as well, we intend to sort of keep up with the rhythm of having these dialogues, regardless of whether or not we have funding from other organizations. We'll just continue to do them because we like to engage with you, and we like to learn from each other. So we've decided that we're going to keep this up. So if you would have noticed, on the 27th of May, we sent out a new publication, which is on Section 37C of the Pension Funds Act, which relates to retirement fund death benefits. And, all the sort of questions or stuff, we tried to answer those that we've sort of been receiving over the past few months. to just try and sort of have an easy reference for everyone. So that publication was distributed 2 weeks ago, 2 Fridays ago. You would have received it in our regularly scheduled Atleha-edu mailers. So we've decided that our next online dialogue will be on that sort of publication that we've released. And this will be on the 28th of June, which is 2 weeks from today. So we're giving you a break for a week. Yeah, it'll be scheduled for the 28th of June at the same time, which is at 10 a.m. Sean has just shared the registration link. So if you're interested in joining us for that particular dialogue, then please be sure to just click on that link and register. We'll also be sharing these slides, so you'll be able to access the link from the slides. Yeah, so I'm just gonna run us through today's agenda before we sort of officially get started. So currently we're doing the welcome and introduction, which is by me. And then, well, we're doing the workshop agenda, and then I'll also be, I'll be keeping it brief, because I think by now most of us are aware of the Atleha-edu platform, but I think just for the sake of people that will be watching this recording, we'll probably just run through sort of the essence of what Atleha is about. And then we are very excited. We will be having a guest presenter today, Advocate Makubalo Ndaba, who will be presenting to us on the evolution of pension funds. So yeah, we're pretty excited for that. Then we'll do the normal Q&A session. But we were talking, and because we like to have these dialogues be very interactive, this doesn't mean that we're going to limit the questions to sort of after Makubalo presents. So if maybe while he's presenting, there's a question that you maybe feel you want to ask, feel free to drop it either in the chat section or raise your hand. I will be looking out, well, myself and Sean, we will be looking out for any questions or hands raised, and then we'll bring it to Makubalo's attention. And then, as always, we'll be doing our short little M&E questions or M&E polls, and then we will close the session, hopefully at 10:30. So we are just quickly going to be doing some introductions. I will start, I'll introduce myself. So I am Sefako Mative, as you would know, and I am sort of alongside Adrian and my colleague Sean. We are in Six Capitals, but then we also focus on sort of generating the content and sort of organizing these dialogues, these in-person ones as well, under the Atleha-edu brand. Yeah, and that's kind of my field, or that's kind of what I do. I enjoy sort of interacting with everyone. So this is my natural fit, I suppose, being put on this side, the education side of the sort of Six Capitals business. So I'm very excited to be here today. I'm going to let Sean introduce himself first, just for the sake of everyone knowing who the Six Capitals people are. And then Makubalo, our esteemed guest, can go next. Sean.
Thanks, Sefako. Yeah, so as Sefako mentioned, I apologize for that. I work for Alternative Prosperity Holdings. So Six Capitals is a division of Alternative Prosperity Holdings. So I kind of wear many hats. But as of the beginning of this year, I've started assisting Six Capitals just in terms of some business development, administration, and that type of thing. And primarily just looking to increase our awareness and reach, and to further progress and create more impact in terms of consumer financial education. So I think you'll be seeing a little bit more of me in terms of some communications and potentially some in-person sessions going forward. But yeah, happy to be here, and thank you once again to Makubalo for joining us today. I'm looking forward to the content and to the presentation. And yeah, guys, please, we really do encourage participation with the discussion. And if you need any assistance, please just pop me a message. Thanks.
Morning, colleagues. And thanks, Sifago, for the introduction and for hearing from Sean from the organization. I haven't met him before. My name is Makubalo, as Sifago has indicated. The surname is Ndaba. I'm a lawyer by profession. I trade more on the employment law space, it being industrial relations and pension law. For that, I went to study, to do a master's in employment law some 22 years ago at the University of Central Lancashire in the UK. I ran my own outlet and I've had a privilege of serving as a trustee of the Government Employees Pension Fund. I'm on my way out now. I've been requested to serve in one of the largest umbrella funds run by Liberty, in which case I have agreed starting last month. So I'm happy to be here to be sharing perspectives with us on issues of pensions, as Fago has indicated. We'll be talking about the evolution, and coupled with that, we'll be talking about access to funds, and which I think those of us who are members, of course, all of us, I would imagine, we come from the public service space and from a private space, where in this issue of early access to pensions that was first indicated by Minister Tito Mboweni, people are interested to know how is it supposed to shape up. So I will be talking about those two issues because they interlink with each other, the evolution of pensions and the early access to pensions, because there's an irony of a dichotomy there, because it's a pension that has to be kept and it's a pension that people want to access. Yeah, that would be the conversation for the day. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Makubalo. We are very excited to have you with us. Comrades, as you can hear from his introduction, he is a very, very experienced and well-qualified man to be running us through today's topic. So we are very, very honored to have you with us. Now that we have introduced ourselves, maybe just for the sake of Sean and Makubalo, who aren't obviously regulars, maybe comrades, you will also introduce yourselves. Maybe just let us know where you're from and sort of your interest in today's dialogue. You know, maybe what you're hoping to learn, or if there's a specific sort of theme within this subject matter that Makubalo mentioned that, you know, you'd be more interested in exploring. So I'm just going to I'm going to call out your name according to how it appears on my list. So if I call out your name, please just sort of introduce yourself, like I said. So yeah, first on my list is Lina. So Lina, if you don't mind introducing yourself, that would be great.
Thank you very much, Comrade Sifako. I'm Gianni Lina. I'm from the nursing organization of the country, South Africa. Just like Babu Ndaba has indicated, that is the interest for all of us, especially the shop stewards. Members down there on the ground, they are waiting for us to give them a directive as to what should happen to the money that we all envisage to get. Thank you very much. I'm very interested on the topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Lina. I can hear the passion in your voice. So hopefully this will be a very interactive session. Next on my list is Mr. Moses Standar.
Thank you, Sefako, and good morning to everybody. I'm Moses Standar. I'm attached to NAPTOSA, National Professional Teachers Organization of South Africa. And NAPTOSA is affiliated to FEDUSA. And I'm very interested in this topic. For us in the public service, this is the debate whether to have access to the pension fund. In our case, it's a GPF, or no access. Are those funds exclusively there for the day when you retire? Or do we allow access to the fund prior to retirement, and what will be the implications if we have access to the fund before retirement. So that is some unions will debate in favor. We in Aptosa say no. Those funds are exclusively there for retirement. You may live another 20, 25, 30 years. And what will be the cost of living then? So I'm looking, just as Lena, I'm looking forward to the debate. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Moses. Okay, yeah, I see everyone is ready to have this conversation today, which is very exciting for us. And like I said, we are very fortunate to have someone with actual practical experience on this specific topic. So hopefully depending on the duration of the debate, hopefully most, if not all, your questions will be answered. The next person on my list is Mr. Sabelo Zondo. Please, comrade, introduce yourself. Good morning. Mr. Zondo, can you hear me? Or should I give Tandega a chance before you?
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sabelo Zondo. I'm a Bekau shop steward. I'm based in KZN, but I'm interprovincial. I'm very glad to be part of this initiative, and I'm looking forward also to contribute.
Thank you very much. We are very happy to have you contribute as well. And then the last person on my list is Ms. Tandega Piri. So if you don't mind, please introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. As you've heard, I'm Tandega Piri. I'm from the Motor Industry Staff Association, or MISA, which is affiliated to Producer. I'm employed within our Johannesburg office. And yeah, as with all the other comrades, I'm really interested in the debate today and the information that we'll be receiving. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. Again, we are very, very excited. We are very happy to have you all here. I can hear that everyone is quite interested in today's topic, so I hope we can do it justice, but I'm fairly confident that we will. Yeah, so anyone else that joins will just introduce themselves in the chat. We'll officially get started. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm just quickly going to run us through the Atleha-edu platform again before Makubala can start with his presentation, just for the sake of the people who might be watching this recording later. So as I've said before, Atleha-edu is an entity / organization which was formed specifically for the education of retirement fund member trustees, as well as other stakeholders within sort of that circle. So we aim specifically to create and generate content that sort of takes very complex investment or anything that basically affects the retirement fund industry, take those concepts and simplify them into something that your everyday retirement fund member can read and understand in order for them to be more educated and also to be more empowered. Because if you're more educated, then you're automatically more empowered because you're making more informed decisions. And that's sort of an important sort of thing needed if we are aiming to enact change within our society. So we split the sort of education that we do into two sort of wide areas. We do it either through interactive education, which is like these workshops that we have, as well as our in-person workshops, as well as awareness education, because we don't always, obviously we can't reach everyone through these workshops. But we are hoping that at least the content that we generate will be able to. So we, our awareness content that we create is split into sort of 5 broad types of content. That will normally be our educational publications, which would be between 16 to 20 pages. We then take the content that is found in those publications and convert sometimes that content into short articles. And these short articles will make a selection of certain topics within the publication and use those to create smaller short articles. Maybe if you don't have the time or you quickly want to read up on something, then there will be a short article related to that theme. We also have little infographics, which we which we found are actually nice little posters to put on like notice boards and places where everyone can see, just to get a sort of snapshot of a specific theme or of a specific sort of topic. And then we have my personal favorite, which are the video bits. So this is where we sort of create short little animated videos to explain a particular concept, as well as lastly, sound bits, which are sort of audio recordings of someone reading our short articles aloud. And this is to sort of try and meet everyone where they're at, because we know that some people are visual learners while others are audio learners. This is sort of in an attempt to try and reach as many people as we can in their best sort of learning method. And the nice thing about some of our articles is they're translated into a host of South African languages. And that, I think, is just a little way to sort of, for people to learn in a language that they're more comfortable in. I just quickly want to highlight, as I've mentioned earlier, we have a new publication that we sent out 2 weeks ago, and this is on retirement fund death benefits, relating to sort of the trustees' responsibilities and duties where this is concerned. So if you've been interested in sort of finding out more about how trustees of a pension fund will determine who dependents are, or who someone's death benefits need to be allocated to, this publication sort of provides a little more detail. And just a reminder again that in 2 weeks, we will be having another online dialogue where we will be talking specifically about this publication. So if you're interested in that, please be sure to register. So if you are interested, but everybody that is in this call already should be receiving our content, but if you are interested in receiving Atleha-edu content, all you need to do is head up to atleha-edu.org, and it'll lead you to this page. And if you click here on the sign up tab, it will lead you to a little form right here, and you just fill it in. It shouldn't take longer than 5 minutes. And once you click on submit, you will be added onto our mailing list. And the next, if not the next Friday after you submit, then the Friday after that, you should start receiving content. We generally send out an email every Friday, or most Fridays in a month. So you can almost always expect to receive something from us. Yeah, and that's it on Atleha-edu. If there's any specific questions that you have on Atleha-edu, or maybe you want to sign up your whole board of trustees, or a bunch of people, you can contact either me or Sean, and we will gladly assist with that as well. But if there's any other questions, you can also just contact me or Sean. Yeah.
So Farka, on that topic, before we proceed, if you don't mind, just a thing, I'm going to send a link in the chat now. We're currently running a giveaway of 3 take-home vouchers, so 3 winners. And all you actually need to do is partake is just follow this link and update your details or submit your information there. And you're also welcome to recommend a couple of your friends who find their content valuable. As we mentioned, we're trying to grow the database, increase awareness. So please feel free, especially, if you find this type of topic interesting, and you think your colleagues will too, then it's even more of a reason, and there's an incentive now. And going forward, we're going to be running multiple, let's call them promotions, on a monthly basis. I mean, we've ran a promotion recently, Safaka, to receive a book on savvy retirement habits and that type of thing. So I'm going to pop that in the chat now, and feel free to enter. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Sean.
So I guess we are ready to roll, aren't we?
Yes, we are now heading into your section. Yeah, so thank you everyone. Makubala is about to take over now. Sean, if you don't mind running the presentation on his behalf, that would be great.
Yeah, maybe before I start, Sifako, how long are we contracted here?
Well, well, we're actually early. So you were supposed to start at 25 to 11, but it's 30 now. So you technically have 40 minutes. And then
No, that's great, because I was worried. I was worried that the information might be so much that we can't finish in 40 minutes. I will try to stick more on what seems to be an interest to the attendees, which is the second phase of the presentation, the early access. So I will not go that much deep on the evolution thereof, to the extent that we might not have ample time to deal with the early access. So if it is fine by you, I can proceed.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And colleagues, good morning. And welcome to this conversation that we're having in the morning, and thanks to Sifako and team for inviting me to share these perspectives with us. I was listening to what the attendees expect of the meeting, and I shouldn't say I was taken aback, but it's perhaps for the first time that I hear someone, when Moses Stander indicated that from their perspective, they've got a view on this issue of early access. And I guess that would be much more interesting as we get into the conversation of early access. But before I start, and to what Sean has indicated, that he has to reach out to as many of you as possible in order for you to participate and for colleagues to participate. In South Africa, we have got an anomaly where people who would have worked for about 40 years saving their monies, but they know so little about how what they have worked so hard to save is governed. Are they supposed to enjoy it? You would have worked, maybe even contracted some occupational disease, and you want now to go and rest with your grandchildren, and you know so little about that which belongs to you. And by that time, the children are out in their house, the house is paid up, kids have finished college. You have got the life that you want to live for what remains of you in the world. But people don't know much about this that is supposed to take care of them as they grow old. So I want to implore on you and to Sean's request to reach out to as many people as possible to get to understand how these things are supposed to shape up by participating in these particular workshops, because it's not just an eye-opener, it's about the lives of workers who would have worked hard and saved so much for themselves. So they should know how their money is governed and how their investments are run, and how are they supposed to know where to raise the siren when the problems arise. So having said that, I'm going to talk in the main first about the phenomena of retirement funds. And it's a pity with these types of conversations, it's difficult to have a conversation wherein people can interact, and because of the time limitations, because I always like to pose questions to people in terms of how do they understand these issues. First, talking about the phenomenon of retirement funding, as we know, is obviously an occupational issue. It would come from a person who is working formally. There is a quotation that we have seen in that we've seen there, which says just a few generations ago, older people could continue to be productive by contributing their insight, wisdom, and knowledge of crafts and farming. By the early 1900s, however, America experienced a profound shift in the nature of work. The Industrial Revolution transformed many craftsmen and farmers into factory workers, and the sense of shared effort that marked the labors of earlier eras disappeared. Workers became, in a sense, replaceable cogs, and eventually came to see their jobs solely as a source of income rather than a way of life. Meanwhile, advances in medical treatment and safety of the job greatly prolonged the average worker's life, close quote. And we do hear that the first private pension was instituted in 1875 by American experts. So what this means to us is that when the first industrial revolution started, that's when the issue of workers saving for their future started. In the past, as we would know, people were dependent mainly on subsistence agriculture. And before that, people would just do hunting. So subsistence agriculture, you would be working the land until your knees can no longer carry you. And out of that, when you get old, then your son or your daughter would take over from where you have been working. So in that sense, then they will start to look after the older people who can no longer work for themselves. However, at this point in time, I'm talking about the fourth industrial revolution, people are no longer into farming and all these other things, and farming has been highly industrialized. So you only depend on one thing when you get old, which is your pension benefit. We can move. So in South Africa, I posed a question in earlier conversations with trustees and members of pension funds and unionists as to what do they think could be the composite number of the retirement savings in South Africa. And people, of course, the number was underwhelming in terms of their own understanding. You'll be surprised that the pension savings of retirement funds in South Africa represent a very significant percentage of the gross domestic product, almost 100%. As Sifago would know where we sit with our GDP, I guess it's 4.6, Sifago, isn't it? 4.6 trillion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
So the retirement fund industry would be hovering around 4.35 or 4.4 trillion. So we suggest that the savings of workers occupationally, and of course, those people will be contributing towards voluntary retirement annuities. They are so huge and significant in the South African economy that it doesn't, it is unwise for workers not to take these things seriously, because it suggests that on their own, if they were to talk with one voice, having an agenda that is developmental and are able to sell it, everyone would be listening to their workers because they own so much money in South Africa that no one else has got. I mean, when it represents almost 100% of the GDP, it just tells you how these savings are held, which belong to you guys that we're chatting with today. So, talking about the, can we move? I want to talk about the demographic change and the unbundling of households. You know, in it should have been 2007, 2006, 2007, there was a study that was made by the presidency then, the head of the time at the time, or the Director General in the presidency, his name was Mr. Joel Netitenze. They issued a publication called towards a 15-year review, in which case they were going to be looking at how South Africa has moved since 1994 to the 15th year after 1994. And they picked up something very interesting to say households in South Africa were unbundling, which means where you used to have a big family unit, economic circumstances were changing. Where you used to have an uncle looking after the kids of his sisters, of his brothers, people no longer did that. And to the extent that people were moving away from rural areas to urban areas because of this rapid urban immigration, I guess those of us who are into metropolitan areas would be able to tell that a few years ago, you wouldn't see these many locations of shacks or slums. But it has happened after 1994 that people are running away from rural areas to urban areas and to areas where there are no even amenities to look after them. So this has meant that people are no longer able to use the land. Remember, we spoke earlier on that people are dependent on the land. They're no longer able to use the land. They are dependent now on government in terms of the social grants and all these other things. And now what people used to do in terms of being helped by their relatives, it's very minimal to the extent that your pension becomes the only thing that can guarantee sufficient comfort to your beneficiaries or your children or your grandchildren when you pass on. Whereas in the past, even if a person passes on, you did not entirely have to depend. People have to worry about it because your own siblings, your own cousins would take care of your family. And one of the things is that the issue of households has become a bit small. People, are looking after their own problems. You can imagine now we're talking about issues of petrol, issues of prices that are going up. People are just looking after their children. They don't care much about people who are not their children or family. And that also adds then to the issue of us having to be very careful as to what is it that you leave when you have to unfortunately pass on living children. Henceforth, then it becomes important to talk about pensions. Then let's go to the aging issue. Well, I couldn't say much about some of the things that I do in the pension space. I also partake in an organization of pension lawyers. This is based in Toronto, in Canada. It's called the International Pension Lawyers Association. In fact, I'll be talking about this issue on the 28th, 29th of August in Amsterdam, about the issue of age in terms of how in South Africa has it actually affected us. And as you are going to hear, we haven't been at a stage where Europe and the Americas are, and of course Australasia, on the issue of age. There's been a problem of, I think Mr. Moses Standard did talk about this, that people are living longer than they used to do. In Europe, they've had that earlier than us, to the extent that in other countries in Europe, they've had to extend the pensionable age so that people should be able to get money, because there are few people entering the market, I mean the pension space in the form of new employees, and there are more people are living longer, indicating that you have got more people now retiring than people entering the pension space. That then means if you have got few people entering the job market and more people leaving the job market, the people who are supposed to pay for those who are leaving are smaller than the people who are leaving, and the pension benefits become low. What does that mean? In South Africa, at least with the pension fund that I've got experience of, which is a government employees pension fund, the government employees pension fund is more than 100% funded, which means at any time a person decides to leave, is guaranteed what has been promised. However, if you go to Europe and the Americas, the average funding levels of pension fund is between 68 and 72%, which means whatever have been promised can only be at the rate of 68 or 72% because of the aging problem. You have got so many people who are aged and very few who are entering the market. Because if someone enters the market at 21, you will be working maybe for the next 40 years or 39 years to live at 60. And all the years that you are working, you are subsidizing those who are leaving. So if you have got few who are entering the market and more who are leaving, then there's little money for those who are actually leaving. So in South Africa, we have not yet reached that stage, but projections are that South Africa is most likely to follow the pattern of Europe in terms of the aging problem. Even though in Africa as a whole, it is believed that Africa in the next 35 to 40 years, its demographic dividend would be that it would have changed. It would have the youngest people in the world will be in Africa, because we've got a younger population compared to Europe and others. So it's something that is very interesting that you may want also to read in your own space, just to understand how the issue of age is actually influencing this process. So it's so important, because when you talk about early access, those are some of the considerations that people have to look at as to what is it that you are going to concentrate on when you are being told that you must provide reasons for early access. And mind you, as was spoken about, people who used to have to till the land in order to survive. In modern times, the land is not there to look after you, and it stands to reason that you have to get a pension. And then before I get to the issues of the retirement as a culturally neutral issue, I think it's important for me to unpack for us how retirement funds all over the world are shaped. They call it the three-pillar system. The three-pillar system has got three pillars. You have got the occupational pension, where that you contribute and your employer contributes to every month, mainly on a 50-50 basis, maybe 7.5 and 7.5 to make 15%. And then you'll have your voluntary contributions. Those might be having a retirement annuity either from Sanlam, from Liberty, either from Metropolitan or Mutual. And then the third pillar is a state-funded social services grant. In South Africa, we normally call it a pension for those who are more than 60 years, and the foster cares and the grants that are being paid, the 350s that are being paid, and whatever. However, in a real sense, when you look at it in terms of how the world interacts with these issues, the third pillar, in Europe, the government actually pays for people. For instance, I remember in the UK, if you are, let's say, unemployed, you don't have a place to stay, you go to the council, and the council will give you money for the period when you are looking for work, and they'll give you a council home, and you'll be given deductions on paying things like water and whatsoever. So in South Africa, we're not there yet. We don't have the third pillar in South Africa, even though people mistakenly call this plus 60 years money pension money. It's not pension money. It's a means tested. You can't get it if, for instance, you have got a few millions in your bank. The social services will insist on you having to share with them your personal issues before you can access that money of that people get at the age of 60. So it's important that people should not, when they are working, assume that when I turn 60 years, I would also partake on that part level. Excuse me. Yeah. So there's been a question about the question of culture and retirement, as to whether is it really culturally neutral, or does it transcend maybe different cultures? And I guess what we come to the conclusion there is that the cultural definition of retirement has been overtaken by the industrial age of definition. So as I spoke about cattle, people having to till the land, I've been watching some documentaries, for instance, in other parts of Asia that are still a bit behind on civilization, in other parts of Africa where people are not working, they are just subsistence farmers, and so maybe for them the retirement a definition could still be defined in terms of how South Africa used to define it maybe 3 centuries ago. However, in respect of South Africa, we have transcended that. Our definition of retirement is definitely the industrial age one, wherein you have got a pension that they take money out of your salary every month, and the employer has to equally pay something into your pension fund, so that at a particular age, if it is a time when you decide to withdraw, you withdraw. You are disabled, you get a disability grant. If you get divorced, and the spouse can access your amount. If you pass on, a death benefit will come out of that. So that is how then we come to the conclusion that we have transcended the cultural definition of retirement funds. So I want to conclude on this one by saying that in South Africa, we have transcended the cultural definition of retirement with the inclusion of race groups, of course, because in South Africa, in the past, not everyone could have this. I think those who are from the public service would know that even currently, the public service is grappling with what used to be called the previously discriminatory practices, that people who were women and were married were not allowed to participate in retirement funds across the races. And when the interim constitution was enacted in 1993, it outlawed all forms of discrimination, and that not only race discrimination, including sex discrimination. So what the GPF has taken as a position I don't know how private funds have been able to deal with it, was that women who have been discriminated into contributing to pension funds as a result of their gender have to be compensated in this way. If you started working in 1976, you are Miss Dlamini, and you were employed on the same day with Mr. Dlomo. Mr. Dlomo was contributing to his retirement fund. Ms. Dlamini was not, because she was a woman. And in 1996, government passed a law that everyone should participate in retirement funding. So money was put aside by National Treasury to pay back women who were discriminated upon because of not being women. So it's in the GPF calls it the previously disadvantaged PDP, previously disadvantaged program, and people have had their retirement funds enhanced when they actually retire. And I'm talking from experience here. The other day, I got a frenzy call from my mother who said she saw my mother is a pensioner and she used to work for government. I saw some message from my phone saying that I've got this much in the bank. I don't know whether this scams. I said to her, Mama, I don't know either. Just go to the bank and check whether you really have this. And then she was shocked to learn that they've paid so much in terms of the reversal of the previously disadvantaged team. So I'm trying to illustrate here is that there was a time in South Africa when not everyone could be able to contribute on the basis, of course, of the land, of the laws that were applicable in the land at the time. And the review that was done by the presidency indicates to us that families are unbundling due to rapid urbanization and leaving the elderly in rural areas a bit exposed as well. And I mean, we do see documentaries of old women and men having to look after themselves. And this trend would have been a bit horrible have we not had the means-based pension benefits for those old people. I'm told every month they have to go and get paid the pension. And of course, the criminals sometimes prey on the old, but the reality is that a government does provide for them. Every year when the Minister of Finance passes the budget, there will be little that will be allocated to the old in terms of the means tested. And with the slow death of subsistence farming in the rural areas and people running to the locations, it does mean that sustaining livelihoods is being replaced by social security system, including pension benefits. So it's become so critical that people should understand pension benefits beyond what appears in a benefit statement, and to understand its interlink with a greater social assistance program. Henceforth, these types of trainings are so much critical to you who are in the leadership, so that you are able to share with the people the importance of these particular issues. So I will drop it there for questions and comments before we go for the early access to funds.
Does anyone have any questions, or can we move on?
I don't seem to be seeing any questions, Sifako, to the extent that I want us then to move to the age of COVID-19.
Oh, wait, we have a question now.
Okay, yes,
Moses has a question.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sifako. No, it's just a comment. The discrimination against women in the public service, that is what we call the redress. Women were discriminated against when they were not married, but had a child, then their permanent status would be converted to temporary status because they're not married. Women were discriminated against when they were, can you believe it? And don't laugh. They were considered too fat. Their permanent status would be converted to temporary status. Then after a certain period, they had to be to apply to be appointed permanent again. So that is what we call in the public service the redress. And in the PSCBC, those women who applied, they were then remunerated. They were paid for the extra years because in that period that they lost their permanent status, they did not contribute to the pension fund. So they were then compensated for that period where they lost their permanent status. So we called it the redress, the pension redress. Thank you, Sefako.
Yeah, no. Thanks for elucidating on that particular one, and also to indicate that those who actually applied is a bit painful when we hear people calling you asking about monies that other people have received and they haven't received them. I would imagine that at the time when this was communicated, because the PSCBC resolution on this was in 1998, and it should have been then communicated to all government departments in the provinces and elsewhere. And it would seem that others did not reach it, and others lost out when it came to the cut-off date. And unfortunately, when the money, mind you, is the money that they have not contributed. So this money had to be found elsewhere. And when this money had to be found elsewhere, the cutoff date had already been driven past. So what National Treasury could allocate could only be an amount that has to deal with the numbers in front of them. And to the extent that even the money that could be found, people could not get 100% of the computed amount. The monies that people actually got is 68%, because National Treasury had to give that to the Government Employees Pension Fund because it had the database of these members. And when it was calculated, it was found that it would have been difficult for them to get 100% of what they actually lost. So they got a 68%. And that was part of the resolution that the computation would be made by National Treasury. So it's unfortunate that there are people who are out in the cold, and in terms of the economic pressures that are facing the country today, it's difficult to imagine that government will ever have the money to assist those who did not get it. Colleagues, then let's move to the age of COVID-19 policy responses affecting retirement savings. You know, on this one, I will insist on us throwing in a comment before I start. It's not all of us, but of course, those who cannot, I mean, by all means, don't feel pressurized to respond. In what circumstances do we believe that employees should have early access to their funds? And I want to indicate like this. You already have a situation where a person leaves work, you get a withdrawal benefit. Either a person is retrenched, or a person resigns, or a person is dismissed. You already have a situation where a person goes on pension, you get a lump sum, and then you'll get an annuity monthly, depending on your pension plan. You already have a situation where if you get injured at work, you get a disability benefit. There is also a divorce benefit that the other spouse can claim should there be a divorce between the parties. And when a person passes on, there is a death benefit that a person gets, that the beneficiaries get in respect of what had actually accumulated in respect of that person. Now, people want early access. What particular special circumstances do we believe that people should have access to their funds, except the ones that I've just indicated? I'll be waiting for comments from us who are attendees.
I think, Makabale, if I can contribute just for the sake of kickstarting.
Yes.
I think you'd be very much suited to answer this type of question, but I did some work for 1 or 2 years in the mental health space, specifically geriatric psychiatry. And, you know, often some people aren't mentally able or capable to make financial decisions. And in worse circumstances, you know, you don't know what you don't know. And if you as a family member or whatever it may be, aren't aware, or the person isn't exactly aware that they're not 100% mentally able to make these types of decisions, often the curators and that type of thing are appointed. But is there some type of clause or instance where that takes shape? Because I mean, obviously if there's a divorce, you know, then the wife would be entitled to something. If the person passes away, beneficiaries would be entitled to something. But what about that type of instance? You know, I'm just spitballing here because you've covered all the bases, and I can't see a reason as to why someone would need early access aside from what you've mentioned. So maybe just something in that regard.
Well, I'm just here for comments. I don't know either. But the reason I'm asking this is because there are deliberations as to what do we mean by these exceptional circumstances. And it will have to come from workers themselves. And I've indicated earlier in the meetings we've had that it has to be workers who should be able to provide the exceptional circumstances. And as Mr. Moses Standard here has actually fired the first shots, there is a dominant impression that pensions are meant for use at a later stage of your life. Of course, we'll allow exceptional circumstances. So it's important that we hear from people about exceptional circumstances. Thank you, Sean, for that. And is there anyone who wants to raise something? Okay, Moses, yes, your hand is up.
Mr. Chair, this is the $1 million question for me. I'm in the education sector. After 10 years, my pension, I'm now sharing personal information. After 10 years of teaching, my pension payout per month would have been something around 7,000 Rand. I'm now back in the education sector for 18 years. End of this year will be 18 years. Mr. Chair, if we have access to our pension funds, for what purpose would it be? Would it be to pay off the bond on my house? Would it be, I don't know. Because for me, involved in the union, one of the big problems amongst the educators is I may be over-exaggerating. I may be totally wrong. But my experience has been the issue of financial literacy. Savings, looking after your finances, taking out policies, retirement annuities. That is one of the big problems amongst educators. You will be surprised. If I'm out of order, Mr. Chair, you must rule me out of order. You will be surprised.
No. You feel free, but allow us so that, yeah, we can move because we've got 30 minutes to go. Yeah.
Yeah. You will. I will conclude with this. Was it the FNB? Was it the FNB who announced a week or two ago that 5 or 6 days after people have paid, I think it's the middle class, 80% of the salaries depleted? It was a finding based upon the research of the FNB. If we have access to our pension funds, for what purpose? What will be the reason? What will the conditions be? That is, if you can answer that question.
Yeah,
for
no. For me, it's a question I'm posing as well. But let's move maybe to Lina. Maybe Lina is going to say. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Lina?
Yeah, okay. No, thank you very much. Yeah, this is indeed the question that pokes.
You are a bit low on volume, Lina. Can you speak up a bit?
Oh, okay. No, I was saying thank you very much. Indeed, this question is poking our thoughts. But nonetheless, my response would be, at the age of 60, like you've been talking about the lifespan that we should be, or that we are envisaging to face, at the age of 60, 70 or so, what am I doing with a decent house that I failed to have at my age, at 45, at 35, at 50, where I'm able to do any other thing that I like now? What I have learned is that most public servants, we are in debt. And the reason why we are in so much debt, it is because of the affordability challenge. So should we get what belongs to us, meanwhile we are able to stand and decide and do things, the better. That's the submission I'm making. Thank you.
No, thank you, Lina. I guess we are going to move. You know, colleagues, I'm raising this question because it's going to be a very difficult issue. You know, all of us will remember in 2016, I think the minister was Mr. Pravin Gordon at the time. He put before Parliament the amendment, Tax Laws Amendment Act, and out of it was an issue about annuitization of provident funds. As you know, with provident funds, I guess all of them stand to be corrected. When you go, when you leave, you get the lump sum, and that's where it ends. And what government was proposing that, you know, it's not helping people to be getting these big sums only to suffer when they are in retirement, because the research has already been conducted that when people get those monies, knowing quite well that maybe you got $1 million and you still have to fend for yourself for the rest of your life, the first thing they buy is a car that is worth 500,000. It's taken almost half of that $1 million. And the same thing that happens is a lifestyle change, as if you're going to get that 1 million every year. So it may be that the research will disagree with Ms. Gianni, that when people get money, they are able to deal with their immediate things. It may be that research is going to indicate that when people get money, instead, they buy things that do not really matter in their lives. So I'm raising these issues so that people should sharpen their arguments. As this matter will be out for public comments and whatsoever, that government should not be seen to be inconsiderate of people where you give people money and instead of them having to deal with important issues like education of their children and whatsoever, buy fancy things, and sooner or later a person has to come to government looking for the means test pension because that person could not save for his or her future. And now the people who are actually indigent, who actually need government assistance, will be queuing with people who could have saved for their futures. So those are the conversations that as leaders, you should be taking to the members so that maybe you can become wiser as to what is it perhaps that needs to be done. Having said that, colleagues, I'm going to talk about the age of COVID-19 and policy responses, because when COVID-19 came, there was a big debate internationally when there were these shut downs, what do they call it, the level 5 and all those things, where people end up not going to work because it is believed that they are going to be spreading the disease, and it affected productivity. And then if it affects productivity, it affects the bottom line. And then the question was, in these instances, we have got so much money that has been saved by members. Why don't you allow some partial access? Because these are special circumstances. These are exceptional circumstances. And then the debate took place almost at the same time when Network was also debating the same issue in South Africa. And it also took time at the same place as there was a private members bill that was introduced by the Democratic Alliance in Parliament, talking about these particular issues. So I want to sketch the conversation by just putting up the international perspectives, mostly from your top financial institutions. And then I will come to how South Africa has dealt with the issue to date. So I'll first talk about the OECD. The OECD, there are various countries who are part of the OECD, and I think South Africa is one of them. It said that countries that have introduced a number of policies can be able to deal with these issues. And it actually sketched how people have responded. But if you look at it in the final analysis, is that it does not really encourage people from actually having early access, because in the long term, there will be a limiting of investment returns. Because if you take money from pension funds now, and those monies, you must liquidate some of your investments, in the long term, it will lower the value of the pension funds as they were. And then the IMF. The IMF indicated that the capacity of governments and private enterprises as underwriters of pension obligations to maintain solvency it defined pension benefit schemes under adverse conditions was under strain, which means when people are leaving the labor market, as they did during COVID, and claiming their benefits, the pension funds were already feeling the strain. Then imagine if then people who are not exiting the pension space, and they also want to a cut of their pension funds, what is it that was doing to their pension funds? This is what the OECD proposed. And it comes back to the issue that I asked us earlier on, this question of exceptionalism. Allow access to retirement savings as a measure of last resort and based on individual specific exceptional circumstances. Retirement pots are to finance retirement. The dominant conversation really is that we should understand the role of pension funds. Henceforth, we started with the earlier presentation about the evolution of pension funds, so that we understand that these have been formed in order to assist people at a certain age of their lives, or when perhaps an event like death or disability actually visits a person. So if anything has to be done beyond the categories that I've indicated, what the OECD says, it should be special, exceptional circumstances. And they do go on to say accessing retirement savings could lead to asset losses, as I've indicated, liquidity and investment management problems for pension funds. You know, pension funds, as I've indicated, they occupy a very central role in the GDP of South Africa, but they don't have cash in the main. In the main, they are invested in stocks, either in mining, either in technological companies, either in agricultural companies, and other listed stocks in South Africa and elsewhere. Now, if there were to be a request for people to be paid in early access, some of the pension funds will have to sell their assets. Others own malls, because you can only pay members cash. You have to sell a few of your malls in order to realize the cash. What pension funds do on a month-to-month basis, they have got an understanding of how many people will be going on pension based on their age. They've got, maybe they run an algorithm on terms of an actuarial PEPs evaluation and projections as to how many people are most likely to die on a particular month, and looking back maybe on issues of divorce benefits, and then playing them forward and get an algorithm about that, how many are most likely to get divorced. So what the pension fund will do then is to ensure that for the month of June, at least maybe we've got a sum of about 3 billion rands in cash in order for us to be able to pay these things that we actually envisage. So the early access, if it becomes a big thing involving every pension fund member, does then give an indication that you may have to liquidate more assets than you currently have in terms of cash. So that on its own becomes a problem for the fund, because assets, you invest in assets for long term. Pension funds are long-term issues. So that is what the OECD is saying here. They say current regulatory frameworks already allow for tapping retirement savings in exceptional circumstances when substantial income losses occur, and it should not be expanded further. I think it's critical for us as South Africa to understand that it doesn't apply to us, but in most countries, there's already there are already laws that allow for people to access funding under exceptional circumstances. And the OECD indicates here that one of those exceptional circumstances is when there's substantial income losses, you know. Henceforth, I was asking earlier on, what exceptional circumstances do you think we should be able to access funding? So yeah, I mean, we already have a tip that says in exceptional, where there's been substantial income losses, you can access in other countries. And I think National Treasury will definitely be following that trend. And of course, organized labor would also have to sponsor their own exceptional circumstances beyond what the OECD says. This is not a case in South Africa. There aren't special circumstances. We're saying in South Africa currently, the law only has the categories that I've shared with us guys. There is no category of special circumstances. And that is what National Treasury wants us to put into the law with the early access as to what are the special circumstances. And you really have to think hard about these special circumstances. So the proposals from the IMF advises government to avoid using pension system to address a negative crisis and to implement a temporary regulatory changes. So what the IMF says, guys, this thing is for long term. Deal with the negative consequences of a temporary nature of the crisis. Don't touch pension money. And it adds that pension systems do not lend themselves easily to addressing short and medium-term economic problems. You see that I'm even much more bullish compared to the OECD. The OECD is saying maybe when people, there's substantial loss of income. The IMF says, no. Those things are short and medium-term economic problems. You can't, because these people will need this money when they are when they are on retirement. So they say responses to temporary shocks, therefore, need to be limited in time in order to avoid setting a problem for the pension system in terms of sustainability, adequacy, efficiency. They seem to be saying, policymakers, you must have a better way of dealing with your economic problems rather than thinking about taking the money from the pensions. It is equally important to directly address specific economic problems when those arise. That's what they're saying. They say deal with the issues as and when they come. Otherwise, you are not. It's not going to help to be taking. Okay, as far as your hand is up.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, Makabalo. It's just I've noticed that it's 11:26. So I just wanted to maybe, if the comrades don't have other commitments, maybe we can just try and see if we can maybe wrap up or extend, the closing time by another maybe 10 minutes or so, just so Makabalo can wrap up his presentation and we can just finish up. If no one is opposed, then we can just quickly finish.
Yeah, okay, maybe let's move then to the South African context. Let's move to the South African context because that's what is more important. National Treasury issued a statement in August 2021 that before the emergence of COVID, South Africa has already been recognizing that members should have access in particular circumstances. So that was the National Treasury saying so. And they're saying it's already been at NETLAC even before COVID, because these things, they came after COVID and then they put pressure internationally as to why should the workers just be dying and having left the employment, the firm has been closed and what, why are they not getting early access to their funds? They are on short-term, short-time payments. Others have to be paid. Maybe they must come to work once a week. Why don't we give them the money that they've actually saved? So National Treasury said, no, we've already been considering that because there was pressure on National Treasury to respond to these issues. And this was noted by the Minister of Finance in his 2020 medium-term policy speech, that consideration to give a pre-retirement withdrawals from retirement funds under certain conditions, provided that they are accompanied by mandatory preservation. So I think I must pause there. As I've indicated, in 2016, we remember when government said workers must annuitize, workers rejected that. And when the law was actually signed, the Tax Laws Amendment Act was signed, and they took out the issue of the annuitization because workers rejected it. The National Treasury is coming back with a masterpiece. They're coming back with a masterpiece. They're saying, you know what, workers, we are going to give you early access. But guess what? What that usually you rejected is a give and take. They are bringing it back, what was rejected in 2016. And I think there's nothing that Labour could have done. They agreed in principle that we're going to have a two-pot system in South Africa. You'll be allowed early access under certain circumstances. However, no one will be allowed to take out all his or her money before retirement. If you move to another employer, part of your money will have to go to your pension savings. So I guess that was the masterpiece, and which for me is a balancing act, because even if you allow early access, as long as you also allow for a forced preservation, it doesn't affect the numbers in a very significant way. In fact, it balances up in a very beautiful way. So at NEDLAC, social partners, which include government, trade unions, retirement funds, regulators, and other stakeholders, have been discussing how to increase savings and improve preservation and allow limited withdrawals without creating a liquidity investment. So there's already a discussion now as to how do you move forward in terms of putting this two-pot system. And the early access will not be automatic. National Treasury is on saying that on record on saying that the consideration for early access will require legislative and fund rule amendments. It's going to be a long winded road because of the bureaucracy that involves legislative development in South Africa and elsewhere in the world, because the current law prohibits any pre-retirement access to retirement savings unless an employee resigns or is retrenched. Henceforth, we asked the question when we started as to what other circumstances do we believe should be. And it is expected that the earliest that any changes would become effective would have been 2022. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like. I don't know how far have they gone at NEDLAC in terms of pushing these particular considerations. And they were emphatic at the time that the GPF employees would not be allowed. And I guess you should understand this in the context that says, when people are talking about COVID, state employees were not affected. You didn't have a department closing because of COVID. However, when you go to the private sector, so many firms put people on short payment. Even if teachers were told not to go to school, teachers would still get the amount that they would get during normal circumstances. And in this context, National Treasury said no. In response to this COVID thing, state employees have not been negatively affected. However, others have interpreted it to mean that in the big scheme of things, and then as we know, I mean, we had an explanation about the silly things of discrimination in the past, where maybe even your size you would be discriminated upon. And I don't think there's any law that can apply to other pension funds, and it doesn't allow to members of the public service. So if this early access is actually approved, it will also apply to members of the government employees pension fund. And the process might take longer than anticipated. As National Treasury has indicated, I mean, it's a new system. It has to be priced. It must be put under actuarial stress testing, and be able to deal with what could be a problem going to the future. And you need consultation. You'll need fund rule amendments. you'll also have the administrators having to change their systems, bearing in mind that, you know, when you talk about a pension fund, it is already pre-programmed that there's a code for death benefit, for withdrawal benefit, for divorce benefit. Now, if you've got this law that has been amended, it suggests that now you'd have added another benefit. Others, maybe their systems might not be able to take it because they're so old. It means that they may have to buy new systems in order for them to be able to implement the new system. And the consultations have been ongoing at NEDLAC. And I think the hurdle now could be on the issue of exceptional circumstances. Henceforth, I kept on hammering on this issue as to what do we think should be exceptional circumstances. Because out there, people believe that there's going to be a jamboree of one kind or the other where there will be money for everyone. And in these hard economic times, it's understandable, as Ms. Gianni indicated, people, the issue of economic strains, the issue of debts, the issue of what, you know, it's a legitimate expectation on members to believe that this is going to alleviate what they actually facing currently. However, as I wanted us to understand how policy considerations from international finance companies, they are saying it's not wise. This money is for the future. Don't allow people to spend something that they're saving for the future, because their currency is their salaries, and their salaries are much more higher than what they're saving for pensions. And then how do you then take the little that they're saving for the pensions you give them now? What are they going to have when they go on pension? Evidently, therefore, South Africa follows international standard, where retirement funds are primarily designed to encourage individuals to save whilst working to finance consumption later during retirement. Excuse me. There's consideration being given to allow limited pre-retirement withdrawals from retirement funds under certain conditions, which is going to be accompanied by mandatory preservation upon resignation from a job. So if you move from Department of Education to the Department of Police, this thing of saying, now I'm going to cash my pension and then start afresh, that side, no. If the law passes now, there will be a portion that will have to preserve, maybe there will be a proposal, maybe you must preserve a third of that, maybe then you can use your 2/3, but the third, and as you move between the workers, between the employers, your money is being saved. They've been doing it in Europe, that you live, even across the European Union, you live before, I'm talking about people who belong to the EU. Like you are working in Belgium, you get a job in the Netherlands, you are able to move with your pension fund to the Netherlands, and then from the Netherlands, maybe to to Sweden and whatsoever. So in South Africa, they are also saying you have to do that, even though in South Africa, it could only be maybe in respect of South Africa. However, I doubt if maybe in the future, there could be linkages between South Africa and other countries where if you go and work in Canada, you can go with your pension, you go to work in New Zealand, you can go with your pension, because the pension world is integrating at a very fast pace. So this is in line with international standards that South Africa has to allow people access. It's not a question of whether or not it can, it's a question of when is that going to be implemented. It's surely going to be implemented, but it's important for worker leaders like yourselves to understand that it won't be a manna from heaven. It will have to be influenced by your own contributions as to what exceptional circumstances mean in terms of the early access. And if worker leaders cannot provide exceptional circumstances, then we may have to sit with what the international standard is, wherein there's been a substantial loss of income. Colleagues, that brings to the conclusion our conversation. We guess we need more time, perhaps, just to chat with each other in the minutes that have been allocated. Yeah. I'm waiting for questions and answers. Yes, Fago.
No, nothing. I was just, yeah, so we have time, I guess, for a few questions. One or two, so that we can wrap up because we are severely over time. Or comments, please feel free to do so now. If anyone has anything that they would like to say or ask. Makubalo. Going. Ah, there we go, Moses.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Keep it
just
brief,
from my
please.
side, yeah, very brief. Just from my side, very informative. Not a teacher today, but a learner. So I know exactly the way forward. So thanks very much. Really appreciate this. Time well spent.
Thank you very much, Moses. I see also there's a comment from Dr. Zwane, who's just speaking for the presentations. So the presentations will definitely be shared with everyone, just like if you've attended previous workshops, we've also shared those presentations as well as the recordings. So this will be shared within the next few days or the next week. So don't worry about that. I'll definitely ensure that you get them. Yeah, I think it doesn't seem like anyone has any questions. I see just a lot of thanks in the chat. Yeah, so I would just like to echo everyone's sort of opinion. Thank you very much to Advocate Makubalo Ndaba for joining us today. We are all the wiser for being in your presence. We hope to have you at future interventions. We will definitely have you at future interventions. If there's any more information or whatever that anyone would like on this, we might sort of, if we need to have a follow-up session or whatever, if the sort of interest is strong enough. But yeah, I think on our side and on the side of Makubalo, we definitely do enjoy interacting with everyone and learning from each other. I think Sean already ran the polls. Hey, Sean, you did, nah?
That's correct, Safako. We got some good responses on the second phase of the polls now.
Okay, that's great.
Thanks,
yeah,
thanks, Fago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks,
so
Fago, and thanks to the attendees for us to learn from each other.
Indeed. Apologies to everyone for extending the period a little longer than what we had intended, but I think it was a good use of everyone's time. Yeah, so from me, from the Atleha-edu team and everybody else, thank you so much. Have a good week, and we will see you again in 2 weeks. Goodbye, everyone. Be safe.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.